Ukraine's president has visited Washington to secure more supplies of advanced U.S. weaponry, especially Patriot missile systems. But while standing alongside the American leader, Vladimir Zelensky gave an approving nod to Biden, suggesting that peace talks be resumed despite a conspicuous lack of clarity.
President Zelensky, you have made it clear that he is open to pursuing, well, let me put it this way. He's not open, but you're open to pursuing peace. You're open to pursuing a just peace.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived at Joint Base Andrews just outside of Washington, D.C., stepping off from what we can only assume was a U.S.-funded flight on Air Force One, the American presidential plane, no less. You can see here Republican Congresswoman from Tennessee, Diana Harshbarger, tweeting Mr. Zelensky's arrival, criticizing that the American taxpayer, no doubt, funded this trip. This is a well-timed visit to the States to ask for more money, to ask for more weapons, more arms. The Ukrainian president was then greeted by Mr. and Mrs. Biden along the south lawn of the White House. They briefly posed for photos, and then they were quickly ushered inside. Now, before long, President Biden and President Zelensky held a sort of informal address to the press inside the Oval Office, where the two displayed what I would characterize as an overwhelming amount of affection and praise for one another. I would say it was laid on a little bit thick, and it was here the first time that President Biden confirmed that he would be giving Ukraine at least one Patriot missile defense system battery. There was a lot of speculation on whether or not the U.S. would even provide this system, since operation requires months and months of specialized training, which Ukrainian forces do not have. And certainly time is not on Ukraine's side at this point. President Biden also made it a point to say that Vladimir Putin was, quote, using winter as a weapon. But Biden did underscore the importance of what he said, quote, presenting a united defense. And by that, he simply means throwing more money into the conflict, another $2 billion promise, which brings the U.S. total support package to near $70 billion at this point. They reemerged hours later in a more formal press conference where they took questions from the press. Have a listen to President Zelensky addressing a question about the Patriot missile defense system.
What's going to happen when the Patriot missile systems are installed? We'll give a signal to President Biden that we would like to get more of them.
We're working.
That is our life. We are in war. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
It's a bit disconcerting that both Presidents Zelensky and Biden and the whole press pool would laugh about such an idea of having more Patriot systems given to Ukraine, not just this one. So this, to me, highlights the dysfunction here in Washington, being completely disconnected from the average American who is more worried about the cost of living, the cost of food, the cost of eggs, bread, flour, the cost of heating their homes, the cost of putting gasoline in their cars. They're more concerned about that than continuing to fund what we all know is a U.S. proxy war.
Well, a newly announced aid package seems to have not been enough for Mr. Zelensky. While addressing U.S. Congress, he called for even more American military supplies for Ukraine's war effort.
Our minds again. Yet, thank you so much. We have artillery. Yes. Thank you. We have it. Is it enough? Honestly, not really.
Well, Russia's ambassador to the US says Zelensky's visit has shown that the Ukrainian leader is not as interested in securing peace as he is in building up his military.
Zelensky's visit to Washington and his conversations here have shown that neither the US administration nor Zelensky is ready for peace. The focus was on the conflict, the deaths of ordinary soldiers, and the further interconnection of the Ukrainian regime with the needs of Washington.
Well, we spoke to human rights lawyer and author Dan Kovalik, who says peace appears unlikely if Washington continues to provide so much heavy weaponry to Kiev.
It makes me very skeptical about how serious either Biden or Zelensky are at this point about truly negotiating a peace. I don't think, generally speaking, weapons contribute to peace. I do think this is an escalation. Although at the same time, I think it's also a matter of putting money in the coffers of the defense industry. You know, I think that the U.S. is happy to give that money, whether the Patriot missiles are used or not. As you noted, it would take a lot of training. That there's a U.S. criminal institution, I'm forgetting which one, but that they are now sounding the alarm bells that they expect these weapons to end up in the hands of criminal elements. So this is a real problem. It's a problem that I think the Biden administration has no interest in handling. And how do we know this? We know this because the Democrats voted down in a House committee a Republican proposal to audit the weapons that have already been sent to Ukraine. So we know that the U.S. has no interest in being held accountable on any of this.
Well, while the Ukrainian president evoked a standing ovation in Congress, as mentioned, a U.S. government spending bill has earmarked around $45 billion in aid for Kiev and NATO allies. The legislation emphasized, however, that none of the weaponry go to the Ukrainian military's neo-Nazi Azov battalion.
None of the funds made available by this act may be used to provide arms, training, or other assistance to the Azov battalion.
Well, we heard from political analyst Alexander McKay. He says the proviso not to arm the Azov battalion was actually an attempt to rationalize the enormous amount of money and weaponry being sent to Ukraine.
This is an exercise in trying to retain some plausible deniability. Oh, some weapons got into the hands of some Nazi aligned units. Oh, we didn't know that. We didn't want that to happen. But it's the entire Ukrainian state that's organized around these principles now. So whatever they put in the bill, it's just it's political box ticking, nothing more. So this is a matter of what Hillary Clinton used to call a public position and a private position. In the public position, the American government deplores Nazism and all of its evil crimes. In the private position, they'll welcome and collaborate with Nazis anytime they need a job doing against Russia or against China or against anybody else who is an official designated enemy of the US government. They will work with anybody, no matter how despicable, no matter what kind of a blood-soaked past they've got. They will work with them if it helps achieve their, i.e. the US government's objectives.